Welcome to Your Need to Know. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and joining me tonight is Lynsey Jeffries. She is the CEO of Higher Achievement. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Lynsey, because this is an organization I'm excited to share with our viewers because I've never heard of you before. And people who watch this show are always hearing me say that. It must get old to say, I've never heard of them. And yet, your organization has been around for 45 years and has touched the lives of over 10,000 students. And I put that out there for our viewers to understand that this is something we all need to understand as an organization. So I would love for you to give us a little bit of background about how Higher Achievement started and what it is you do, and how you reach these students.
Wonderful. Well, first of all, Catherine, thank you so much for having me on the program. I'm delighted that Khadijah, our board member from EY, connected you with me. And I feel really honored to get to do this work with Higher Achievement day in and day out. We were founded in 1975 by the vision of a teacher at Gonzaga College High School in Washington, D.C. And he saw the great education the boys at Gonzaga were getting, and right across the street was public housing, particularly tough place to be growing up in the 70s. And he saw injustice in that and wanted to help, at that time, the boys in that neighborhood be able to get scholarships and acceptance into Gonzaga. It grew and changed over the years, serving both boys and girls. And now we place young people in all kinds of great college preparatory high schools. But that was its founding. Greg was a very inspiring leader.
And social justice was the foundation then, and you've got four pillars of social justice that are an integral part of your program now.
Yes, absolutely. The social justice pillars have been part of our founding from the beginning, and they are freedom, voice, solidarity, and justice. And they've been woven into the core values that really undergird Higher Achievement, the way in which we try to do this work to promote educational equity, to lift up the voices of our scholars, to make sure that we are tightening the social fabric of community and really leveraging the power of community.
So, what I love about this program is the fact that it is not based on test scores. So, here in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and you are in Baltimore, the greater Washington, D.C. metro area, and also in Richmond. And we have governor schools here in Virginia. And there's been a lot of debate very recently about, they're public schools, but who actually gets into these public schools? And talking with Otto Carney, who's the former Secretary of Education for Virginia, he talked about the fact that we're not measuring potential. And so some advantage is giving to students who have greater resources. So you get greatly resourced students who are taking tests based on achievement. And what excites me about your program is your emphasis and focus on students who have both the potential and the commitment, the long-term commitment. That seems to be something that is so different about your program.
Yeah, yeah. Higher Achievement at the core of what we're about is this belief that talent is everywhere. It's in every zip code, it's in every family, but opportunity is not. And so we really seek to close that gap. And related to the hard work and the potential of our scholars, we think of ourselves as distinguished by 3 R's: not reading, writing, and arithmetic, which only one of which actually begins with R, but rigor, relationships, and right timing. And all of that leads to results. And so the rigor of our program, it is intense. Students commit over 400 hours a year to Higher Achievement. It's 3 or 4 days per week, and it's from 5th grade all the way through 8th grade, really supporting young people during the pivotal middle school transition. Early adolescence is second only to early childhood in neurological development. And it's when students really need to be able to explore, figure out who they are, explore all kinds of opportunities. And we try to really bring that to them. But the rigor, it does take a lot of work and commitment, both from the scholar and their family, to stay with us all the way through 8th grade so we can support them to get into a great high school. The relationships are really the secret sauce. It's with our staff, with our volunteer mentors, which we always need more of, especially in Alexandria, which may be close to some of your viewers. That really matter in early adolescence as well. Those relationships, the peer networks, as well as the relationships with adults, especially coming out of or into this new phase of COVID, those relationships have been a real balm just to help students cope through the trauma. And then the right timing, it's middle school. There are very few programs that focus on middle school. Mostly they're focused on early childhood or elementary school or college preparatory, sort of on the late high school age. And middle school is overlooked. It's forgotten. And we wonder why we have challenges later on in life. Middle school really does matter.
I think it matters too, just having a conversation, which I did recently with the chief of police for Fairfax County, talking about trying to get diversity in law enforcement, for instance, and the fact that, we're not reaching far enough back in middle school. We talked about the fact that young people don't necessarily have a concept of everything that's available to them as far as professional careers or preparing for them. And an example of that is if young people don't take higher maths in middle school, they may not be ready to move into an engineering program, for instance, in college. And a lot of people are talking about, a shortage of engineers once the boomers all retire. But you have to go all the way back to seventh grade to say, are seventh graders taking the required math to prepare them for a possible profession in engineering? And so I do think people miss the fact that it is necessary to not just start in high school and to set these kids up for success, but also broadening their idea of what's available to them.
And most families don't know that. I'm so glad you brought that up, Catherine. Which classes, particularly in math, that you're taking can determine whether or not you're eligible for an educational path that leads to a STEM career, which is where many more jobs are. And so one of the things that higher achievement really prides itself on is the deep work that we do with families to support them, to be partners with them in their child's educational journey. And we've actually been subject to 2 randomized controlled trial studies, and one of them actually studied this family engagement and found that there was actually an area of statistical significance, that our families were more engaged in this process than the control group. I can talk more about that study if you're interested.
Well, I am, mainly because families are so important. And yet, again, here in Northern Virginia, we are very multicultural here. People come here from all over the world, and some of them are new to this country. Some of the children who are in our public schools are not native English speakers. And so you can see immediately how that might put families and students at a disadvantage if they don't understand the system and parents don't themselves have access to mentorship and guidance when it comes to helping their own students achieve. So, I think control studies, randomized control studies are important because the data always tells a story.
It does. It really does. And it's a small slice of nonprofits that have been studied in that way. There's 1.6 million nonprofits in the country, actually. And of those, only 2% have been the subject of a randomized controlled trial study. And of that 2%, only 10% get positive findings. It's very unusual to land in that small level of sort of sliver of effectiveness, where we've been able to land twice now. Once that included the family engagement as well as the test scores, that our scholars actually statistically significant advantages in test scores. And then also the second study showed for report card grade, GPA averages. And what that does is account for selection bias. A critic would look at higher achievement and say, it's this crazy rigorous program, families are engaged, of course those kids are going to do better. This study shows that you can attribute at least some of the effects to the program itself.
And I do think that that's incredibly important. And I want to just touch a little bit on the fact that after 45 years of this program being in place, you've got anecdotal evidence too, because some of these folks are middle-aged now. Like, 1975. I think I was in middle school in 1975. So I think I know how old the oldest members of this program are. So, what is kind of the archival accumulation of anecdotal stories about achievement here?
Oh my goodness. We've had so many extraordinary people come through higher achievement. I was just sharing with Catherine earlier, our soon to be new board chair actually is a higher achievement alum. He went through the program in the 80s. He went on to Brown for college, got his PhD in education from Harvard, worked at the Posse Foundation. Now he's running a college prep program in Providence, Rhode Island. He's an amazing human, and we're proud to have him as a board chair and also as an alum. We have another alum also on the board who is running a venture capital firm that's focused on investing in Black and Hispanic and women-owned businesses all around the country, and he's doing extraordinary levels of investment. I am proud. I've been able to be involved with this organization for 22 years. My first 5 were as a volunteer mentor, and my last 17 on staff. But it was when one of my scholars was accepted to his top choice high school that prompted me to leave a corporate foundation job to come work for Higher Achievement in 2005. His name is Ariel. He is now 31 years old. I am proud to be his 7-year-old daughter's godmother. I have a 7-year-old son. They're very much growing up together. And, you know, there are just so many extraordinary stories of young people in public service. Actually, I live in Ward 4 in Washington, D.C. My city council member is a Higher Achievement alum, Janice Lewis George. Kenya McDuffie, who's currently the Ward 5 city council member, also a Higher Achievement alum. He's running for at-large city council right now. There are business leaders, there are school principals, nonprofit executives. They're everywhere and doing really wonderful things at a high level.
You know, and that's a testament right there, because you can say, as you have, that having families engaged certainly makes a difference. And there are things, individual things you're doing that we know make a difference, including identifying these students who in middle school, when they need guidance to take the right courses, to set them on the right path so that they get into the high school of their choice and into the college program of their choice. And I think all of that is really important. But knowing that you've got 45 years worth of achievement that you can point to, as you just did, to point to, is such a testimony to the impact of your program. We have to go to a short break, but when we come back, I want to talk further about the programs which are in the Richmond area, the Baltimore area, and the greater Washington, D.C. area. And I'm going to want to talk more about how people get involved as volunteer mentors, because that's something all of us here can get involved in. So please join us after the break.
Do you love sports? Then you should know about STEM. Because maximizing nutrition, analyzing peak muscle performance, calculating the perfect shot, and more are all made possible by science, technology, engineering, and math. In fact, there are more careers than ever in sports science. So if you have a passion for sports, then think about getting involved in STEM and improve everyone's game on and off the field. Get inspired at shecanstem.com.
What are you looking for?
Your blood pressure numbers could change your life. Talk to your doctor about creating a plan that works better for you. Start taking the right steps at manageyourbp.org.
So how was work?
It was 1,300 hours. My math class from 302 was in the trenches. Davy Roth had it the worst. Fractions were coming at him left and right. He just didn't get the damn things. 2 days ago, I tried to teach him what 1/4 of 1/2 was using different sizes of blocks. Yesterday, I tried again by dividing up pizza. Both missions failed.
Oh, no.
But today, I was ready. I created a combat math game where the only way to beat the enemy is to out-fraction them. Davy conquered every last denominator. My game was so successful, the principal is deploying it to math squadrons all over the school. Anywho, how was your day?
Oh, today my boss treated the office to salad wraps.
Salad wraps.
No.
Welcome back to Your Need to Know. I'm your host, Catherine Reed, and tonight we're talking with Lynsey Jeffries. She is the CEO of Higher Achievement. Thank you so much for being here tonight, Lynsey.
Thank you so much for having me.
So I'm really excited to hear more about your program. You are in 3 major metropolitan areas, and that's an enormous organization to run because, you're in DC and yet you've got staff members and volunteers and collaborating organizations spread out over a fairly large geographic area. So tell us a little bit about who some of your partners are in Higher Achievement and some of the collaborating organizations you work with.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for noting that. While we were founded in DC, we were excited, really driven by our research, led cities to reach out to us to say, how do we get higher achievement in our middle schools? So we're in 3 middle schools in Baltimore, 1 in Prince George's County, 6 in the District of Columbia, 1 in Alexandria, and 3 in Richmond, Virginia. And we have wonderful corporate partners across that whole spectrum. Companies, our biggest corporate partner is the New York Life Foundation. We are so grateful for their support. Altria, Capital One, EY, DLA Piper, Marriott, Bates White, T. Rowe Price. We've got a long list of supporters that really make our work possible, both with financial support, many of them with board members, and as well as mentors. I forgot an important one, PwC. We have advisory board members and national board members with PwC across all of our districts. But the mentors are so important, and it is such a two-way street with mentoring. It's a very supported volunteer experience where you're working with the same students every week, usually in groups of 2 to 4, and you're working with them on what we call our high school readiness curriculum, which actually starts in 5th grade, where it's everything around sort of self-identity, understanding what the high school landscape looks like, figuring out what matters to you, what are your passions, what causes matter to you, what might you want to kind of focus on in high school, so that you can know early enough, as we were talking about earlier, what the options are and when you need to start taking pre-algebra, and what kind of volunteer experiences might be important for you to have as you're applying to certain things. If you want to go to an art school, how do you specialize and prepare for those auditions, and all of those factors to really make sure that we provide a real level playing field to help our scholars get to the very best high school for them.
So it seems to me there's 2 things here. There's certainly an emphasis on academic achievement and supporting these students in helping them to achieve academically. But then there's so much more what employers like to call soft skills, which is the emotional intelligence of how you move through the world as you become an adolescent and then a young adult, and then you move into your college years. So what do the mentors do as far as supporting their student through all of these phases?
Yeah. Thankfully, you don't need any teaching experience to be a mentor. It's a very easy to use curriculum that definitely emphasizes the relationship building, but it is more of an academic mentor. So you're getting to know the scholar, you're getting to know what they're passionate about, but you're also teaching about these different life stages and helping them understand the high school landscapes, understand the communities that they live in, and so it's scripted in a way. So even if you're new to working with kids, we really make it an easy on-ramp.
And so do you stay with the same student, or so if I started with a 5th grader, would I be with that student for 4 years, or how does that work?
Ideally, yeah. We'd like to take our scholars, we like to bring new mentors in 5th grade. So we have our scholars have the potential to stay with the same mentor for all 4 years of the program. It doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes there's not the right chemistry. Sometimes the scholar may not stay with the program. But that is what is desired. And often that is the case. It's a wonderful opportunity to build those relationships. And I should say the mentoring usually happens between 5:30 and 7 at night. So most of the time it's easy enough for folks to come after work. And most of our staff, or most of our mentors, are working professionals. We do have some college students and some retirees as well.
So I'm assuming that this started out as being an in-person mentoring program and that it was probably changed by COVID.
Yes.
So
it was changed. Sure.
So are people back to in person? Did you find that being able to do some things virtually was helpful or not helpful? How did it work?
That's such a great question. We did pivot to be fully virtual for about 15 months. We've been in person now for all of last school year and the beginning of this school year. We find that the mentoring is really best when it's in person. Until you get to maybe late 8th grade, after our scholars have gotten into high school, their engagement wanes a little bit, and there can be ways for us to still keep them engaged in the spring if we can engage them more virtually in that spring semester. I will say we've found great success with virtual tutoring. We have a really innovative partnership with a group called Signition that hires, they are a for-profit, but they hire certified math teachers from all over the country to work one-on-one with young people on their math skills. As you may have read, New York Times, every publication has been covering the declining NAEP scores, and math, particularly for students of color, has been such a egregious drop because of the level of disrupted instruction. And so this partnership is showing great outcomes, and that is happening virtually. We have teachers who are in Arizona and Michigan who are working with our scholars from Richmond through Baltimore.
Well, and I think a lot of people have discovered that as awful as COVID was and not being in school, all of us have learned new skills, and it's opened up a world like doing remote tapings. It used to be everything I did was in the studio, and so now I can do a remote taping, which is easier for both of us at this juncture. And so I don't think we're ever going to let that go either. And so I think we have discovered that there can be flexibility in how we maintain relationships and how we do education and tutoring. But I agree with you. The in-person, there's no substitute for in-person, especially for the younger kids. Do you find that transportation is ever an issue? Because I work with a lot of nonprofits where so many kids get cut out of opportunities simply because they can't get there or get picked up.
Yeah, it's something we really work to avoid being a hurdle. We actually fundraise to avoid that it's a hurdle. So we make sure to raise additional dollars to provide the shuttles that are needed for the neighborhoods that are not readily accessible by public transportation, or if there are safety concerns in those neighborhoods, we raise additional dollars to provide those shuttles. However, even with that, the shuttle drivers is a concern in this labor market. And so we often have, especially in Richmond, we've got a strong partnership with Boys and Girls Club, I think Communities in Schools, a few other nonprofits where we bound together to be able to have a shuttle that is shared. I think it's actually housed at the Mary Frances Youth Center. I'm probably getting that wrong.
Well,
but there's a wonderful shuttle transportation partnership down in Richmond to meet exactly that need.
And of course, you're working in urban areas. DC, Alexandria, Baltimore, and Richmond are more urban. And so they have public transportation too, like buses, and some of it's walkable, and students are not necessarily out in suburbs where they really don't have access to any kind of public transportation, that they have to rely on private, somebody picking them up or dropping them off. And I just know that transportation is a barrier to accessing even programs like this one. So it's interesting that you fundraise around that. I know that you've got an event coming up in November, because like all nonprofits, this is what you have to do. I mean, you're raising awareness, but you're also constantly, no matter how many years you've been doing this, you're constantly looking for support.
Yes, thank you for naming that. Our big annual fundraiser is coming up November 2nd. We would love for folks to join us. It's in downtown Washington, D.C. at the beautifully new renovated MLK Library. More details are on our website.
That's really cool. I haven't been to that library since it's been renovated.
It's got a beautiful event space.
So a lot of our viewers are going to be people who are local to Northern Virginia, and you mentioned that you are in Alexandria. So if somebody wanted to be a mentor, what would the process be for them?
Yep. Go to our website. Website is always the first step. Then you apply to be a mentor. There would be an interview on the phone with one of our staff to explain the volunteer engagement a little bit more, ask you some questions, make sure it's a good fit. It almost always is. And then there is a fingerprint and background check process to make sure that our scholars are safe. And then you would start. It's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, kind of depending on the schedule for that center, about 5:30 to 6:30 or 7. In Alexandria, we do especially need mentors, and we're at Francis C. Hammond Middle School, right off 395 on Seminary Road.
Well, that's good, because I think there are probably people who will be very enthusiastic mentors. And like me, they have never heard of you before.
Thank you for helping us get the word out.
Well, like you said, I was just a random meeting, and this is how everything works. It's word of mouth. You make connections, and then you kind of raise up the visibility of this. And I'm hoping that one middle school in Alexandria will turn into more if there are more mentors that can staff the program. And I'm assuming that's kind of how you grow your program.
Exactly. Having enough mentors is one of the key constraints to our growth, or one of the key accelerators to our growth. If we know that we'll readily be able to recruit a great core of mentors, we're much more able to serve that community.
And that's great news for everyone. And as far as the families, if there are families, do you do this through the middle school, or is the middle school then kind of responsible for letting families know that this program exists for their scholars?
We recruit in a number of ways. We make classroom presentations. Now, mostly we're allowed back in classrooms at this phase of COVID. And scholars can say, I want to do that program. Teachers can nominate students. And there's lots of word of mouth. And you can apply directly on the website also for families. We then interview the scholar and the family separately to make sure that both really want to make this multi-year commitment to work with us. And then they are welcomed into the program, matched with mentors, and really immersed in this culture of love and learning.
And that's such a great way of putting it, that there's love that surrounds the learning, and the fact that, families and mentors, and it's all convened and facilitated by this program. But anyone who has mentored a child before knows that it is life-changing for both the mentor and for the young person they're mentoring. It is life-changing. And so I have to tell you, I wish you the best of luck. I hope this isn't the last time we talk about higher achievement. I would love to have you back again. I would love to see your program expand in the Northern Virginia area. And so for those of you at home, if you are so inclined, go on the website for a higher achievement and see if this is a program for you. Thanks for joining us. And this is what you need to know.